All right, we can go ahead and get started. So Mark and Shannon, over to you guys. Would love a quick intro from you guys, and we'll let you take it away.
All right, well, thanks for having us, Peter. I appreciate it. So hi, everyone. If you haven't met me before on one of the previous calls, I'm Mark Santos. I work at the 𝐀𝐨𝐿 Company. I've been here for almost 18 years now, completely dedicated to helping emerging brands like yourself get a foothold in the marketplace. I'm very passionate about that, and that is the reason I stuck around for so long, because I want to see you get into a store, and I'm not so much interested in trying to help Kraft sell another pallet of mac and cheese. So that's why I'm still in the space trying to help you out all, and I've got a whole team of people behind me to try and help you out too. So when the time is right, let's make sure that we connect.
Awesome. Shannon.
Hi, I'm Shannon 𝗏𝗏, and I'm the category manager for the wellness department at Metropolitan Market. That includes supplements as well as body care. I've been here for just going on 3 years now. We've grown our wellness department from an aisle into a destination, which is really exciting. And I guess that's part of what we're going to talk about here today, is how we get products into the department, but how we keep them successful and what partnership really looks like. And yeah, here to answer all the questions.
That's great. So that's what I was thinking about when we were brainstorming with Peter and I don't know, maybe 2 months ago now. I thought, wouldn't it be great to have someone like Shannon join one of these calls and talk about how you can get into the store if you're only direct to consumer right now, and what it takes to stay there. So I think that's the general direction we're going today. But I'll start it off by saying 18 years ago, the first client that I ever had, she had been a lawyer and was just completely disenfranchised with it, wanted to jump and get into something she was passionate about. So she made some really good granola and walked a bag of it into her local store and said to the store manager, I would love to be on your store shelf. Like, what does it take? And so she found out pretty quickly that you just don't go walking into stores, your local store, and hope that the store manager will pick you up. So I think that was like the genesis of this conversation today. So Shannon, if you were there talking to that individual that had walked in and said, hey, I want to get onto your store shelf, how would you have directed them from that point?
I mean, I guess I would probably keep it pretty general, but I would just direct them to the category manager that probably, did cereal, granola, got them in touch that way. And then it just kind of depended if they had more questions from there. But if somebody walks in with a Ziploc of granola, it's going to be a very different conversation than if somebody walks in with a bag that has a UPC on it. So, I mean, I feel like the people we're talking to today probably have UPCs. So a higher level conversation from there. Yeah.
Gotcha. So if it was somebody that was in your particular category, let's say we might have somebody on the call like that today that is in your category and they're interested in getting into Metropolitan, how would you direct those type of people?
I mean, the first thing that we really do is, have them obviously send us what we call a sell sheet, right? I want to see the product. I want to see where price points are. I want to see what your case packs look like. Are you in distribution? Are you direct, right? What are those options there? I want to see ingredients, right? That's really important to me. And I'm pretty sure it is for my colleagues as well, especially how the market is these days, and people paying attention to what's in their products. I feel like ingredients are left out a lot. I would probably start there. And usually it's, if I'm interested, I ask for samples, right? I really like to try everything that I bring in. It's super important, whether I'm trying it or I'm giving it to a colleague to try and give me feedback, or a family member, or team members in the store. These are real people, right, that are out there and shopping. And I want to know, what did you think about the packaging? Did it speak to you? What do you think about the price point? What do you think about the ingredients? How did it taste? What was the texture? How did you use it, right? Did you understand what it was for when I handed it to you? Or did I have to explain it to you, right? Did we have to have a conversation about it? That's also super important. So we definitely start there with the live samples after that. And then if I have questions, right, I go back to whoever the contact was. I usually have a lot of questions. Sometimes it's about packaging. You know, recently I had a hydration brand that approached me and I just wasn't getting it, you know, right off the bat. It just wasn't speaking to me, you know, what's different about this. And so I reached back out and said, you know, I didn't really enjoy the experience, but am I using it wrong? And I was, right? And so it wasn't super clear to me. And so they were able to clarify that for me. And then my feedback was, well, we need to talk about your packaging then. Because if I don't understand it, and this is what I do all day long, right? And I've been in this industry forever, and I'm highly educated in this world, then your average customer who's just walking by and staring at the shelf, they're really not going to get it, right? And so that brand actually took the feedback seriously, and they're redoing packaging, right? We had like a really awesome like hour-long call, and we really just pulled it apart and talked about you know, some unused real estate on the front of their packaging. They had a QR code. That's great, but you're going to lose a lot of customers who are maybe 40 and above, right? Who also have a lot of money in their pocket and are looking to spend it. They don't know what to do with a QR code, right? So there's a disconnect right there. So you need to shout it at the front of your package. So we talked a lot about packaging. And then, I mean, it's like snowballs from there, right? If the packaging is right, if the price point's right, then we start talking partnerships. We start looking at, you know, what's margin, you know, looking like. Are you prepared for promotions? Are you prepared to partner with fees and ads and different promotional vehicles? And a lot of times that's a big conversation. Not a lot of brands are ready for that right away. So
yeah, that was my experience with my first client too. You know, obviously she didn't have a UPC code. I did have to send her over to GS1 to get that set up. And then, you know, of course, packaging was an issue. I don't think it was a Ziploc bag, but it wasn't much more than that. So would you say that those handful of topics that you just thought that you started there are like the most common that you just have to get out of the way in the beginning when you're meeting a new brand that wants to get in a metropolitan?
Yeah, I would say those are the standard ones. A lot has to do with sometimes you get stuck on like case packs, right? Or is there a free shipping minimum? A lot of the structure isn't always there. They're trying to sell me what they would sell to a distributor, right? And like, we order in 36s. And I was like, yeah, that's not going to work with my stores, right? That's how you're selling to a distributor. If we're going to go direct, it has to make sense for me, right? Like there are a lot of retailers out there that have gone to distribution only, which I think it's kind of unfortunate because a lot of small brands aren't ready for that, right? They're not ready to pay those fees, and it can be really expensive and complicated to work with a distributor, especially right out the gate. So I like to keep it open to direct, but it's got to make sense. So I need a free shipping minimum that makes sense. I need case packs that make sense. I think we had mentioned like free fill, right? Are people ready for free fill? You know, does everybody know what that is? It's free product, right? To get yourself on shelf. It's kind of like, it kind of helps pay for the labor, right? To get old product off and get the new product on. So not everybody's ready for that. And then yeah, promotions. There's a lot of conversation around promotions, and that you have to spend some money to get things going. And that's really, really mandatory, right? Like it's just not going to organically happen. I mean, sometimes it does, but that's not really a great plan for success. And we don't want to just leave it to chance, like, oh, I hope somebody sees it on the shelf. So you really want to get in front of people's faces. You want to get off shelf or check stands, in an ad, in some other vehicles that we have, like a savings book. But you've got to be ready to take those steps and spend some money to get that traction and get that repurchase rate and get into people's hands. Demos also are back up and running since COVID has chilled out a little bit. It's critical if you have that type of product for people to have that either, you know, taste experience or sensory experience. Without demos, it's really hard sometimes, just depending on the price point, to get the first purchase. So demos definitely as well.
Yeah, and I'll say this for every
audience question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just bouncing off of that, Shannon, we have a couple questions here related to free fill and opening offers, that sort of thing. So I'm going to kind of combine both of them into one. But for folks that are newer to the space, could you just kind of help describe what free fill is, why retailers ask for that, what the purpose is, and then the second part of the question is, if you're a new brand, what are some fair expectations in terms of discounts, promos, free fill expectations, et cetera, to get in the door and not just be in the door, but also move off the shelf as well?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just kind of speak to me. I know that grocery, frozen, and dairy is a little bit different. So free fill is free product on either, we usually call it first case or first order for each SKU for each location. So it's a one-time, it's like a slotting fee, but you're just taking it off the invoice of actual product instead of paying a fee. What that really does on our end is it takes the product that's going away off the shelf and gets yours on the shelf. So without free fill, we don't have room, right? The free fill is what makes the room for the new product. And if you're not willing to offer free fill, it's just much more difficult because people are beating down the door, right, to be on the shelf. That's what, the game that we're playing here. So I would say it's super important for grocery, frozen, and dairy. It's usually one case free, right? So whether it be a case of 6 or 12 or 4 or whatever it is. For wellness, it's a little bit different. A lot of items come in eaches. So I do what's called 3+3, which means I pay for 3 and you give me 3 for free, or 50% off 6 if it comes in it, or a case is 50% off. So because our price points are a lot higher usually over in wellness, so it just seems like a more fair option over there. There is some negotiation depending on the brand, and that's kind of just discussion by discussion, right? One-offs here and there. It also depends, I think, on how interested am I in the product, how excited am I, how small are you, what kind of partnership are we developing, what other promotions are you going to be participating in? So just that strong partnership and seeing that we're both in this together really helps in that negotiation piece. If you're trying to do maybe 2+2, right? We do that a lot too. Sometimes it's like, okay, we can do 30% off the first 3. It just kind of depends. So, but 3+3 is my standard that I'm looking for. And then you had said what other like discounts like that we're looking for in promotions?
What's call it like a good plan for a brand that's coming to you to kind of already kind of have in mind in terms of promo plan, discount depth, that sort of thing?
So I would say bare minimum, what we're looking for is 1 promotion per quarter. And I would say I'm looking at, especially in this day and age and how the economy is, I'm looking at 25% off. Is kind of really the bare minimum. We used to be able to get away with 20%, but it's not really speaking to people the same anymore. I really am not seeing the velocity that I used to see. I really like 30%. I see the most turns on 30%. It's the most oomph. Brands usually get the most success with 30 and above. Of course, I love to see a BOGO, a buy one, get one free. That's always fantastic. The higher the discount that we can get, and I will say I pass my discount on to the customer. Some departments and some other retailers, they hold back a percentage, and that's just how they do their structure. And that's definitely something that you want to ask up front, is if they pass it all on to the customer, so you guys kind of know where your money's going. I think that's important. I try to be as upfront as I can about where fees are going. And so for me, that's also a negotiation piece, is if you're small, but you're really out there to win it, and I believe in your product, and you're willing to give me a higher discount to the customer, then I will negotiate on fees like ad fees and savings book fees, because I just want the brand to be successful. So I would say quarterly 25% though is definitely bare minimum. And you probably want to be ready to invest in demos when you are on promotion during those whatever time frame in the quarter. In wellness, I like to see month-long promotions as well. Ads are usually 2 weeks long. So grocery, frozen, and dairy, sometimes you can get away with a 2-week promotion. But in wellness, I like to see 30 days as the length. So
great.
Yeah.
We have more questions rolling in, but we'll pepper them in throughout. So
I was just going to make a comment that I want everybody to know this is what Shannon's talking about is not unique to Metropolitan either. This is industry wide, and it varies from retailer to retailer depending on what their individual agendas might be. So she mentioned another term there that was about slotting fees. So that is another way that they will charge you in order to get the product off the shelf. You know, they got to change the labels. They got to have the kid out there putting up the new labels and then loading up your product too. So that's all part of this game as well. So one question along those lines, Shannon, that again kind of reverts back to my first customer situation was she thought she could just walk into the store and maybe be on shelf in like a week's time. But in a modern situation like we're dealing with today, when someone finally gets your attention, let's count that as day one. On average, how long does it take for the product to then actually make it to the shelf if they do everything right? It's like chef's kiss amazing.
I'm going to say it really depends. We have category reviews, which are, we have a calendar that we share with our vendors on our vendor portal link, and it tells you which month we're reviewing which categories. We give you deadlines for when your paperwork is due. And then usually, let's say you present outside of category review. I mean, it could be anywhere from 1 month to 4 months. It just kind of depends on what else is going on, what other projects we have going on. Are we opening a store? Are we remodeling a store? How big is my current, slotted category review? During category review, if you get in right on time or a little bit earlier, right there, it's 90 days usually until the reset happens. And that's when we pull the old product and put all the new products slotted in. And seasonality too. I have a lot of seasonal products and it happens a lot faster because I don't want to miss a window, right? So, but I would say, I would say anywhere between 1 month and 4 months is probably what you want to be ready for.
Gotcha. So not overnight.
No, there's a lot of work that goes into, and I think too that, part of my job as a category manager, specifically for wellness, is, I create a program, right? A plan for the stores to follow. And in order for these plans to get put together, it takes a lot of time. They have to have a heads up, right? The whole execution piece for them. So even 4 weeks is a pretty fast turnaround to get it to happen the right way. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. So once a brand gets on shelf with you in your category, what are your basic expectations for them throughout the duration of their time in store?
Once they're on shelf, I really like engaged brands, right? Like I like to hear from my brands. When brands just, great, I got on the shelf and they disappear, I get really worried, right? You can't just set it and forget it. You have to be really active. I like to see in-store support. I think that's really best case scenario. I know that not all brands have local reps or brokers, but I think that's probably something that you're going to want to be ready for, especially as you grow. Calling the stores is great if you don't have local reps, but just being really engaged with me, checking on the brand, checking on movement, right? I can share movement with you. And a lot of times I'm not keeping always the closest eye, right? Especially after a huge category review. I wait till my 90 days and I see what's going on, just depending. So if you're asking for movement, it gets me looking at stuff. And then you're more likely to get feedback like, oh, hey, that's not really going the direction that we want. Here's what I think we should do. Right. And then we can start that conversation of next steps, better steps. Hey, I know that you had turned in that contract for 25%. I think we should really move it to 30%. Do you think that we can do that? And so I think that engagement piece is just crucial to success, because you never know, right? If it's going to take off the way that we had planned. Yeah,
Perfect. Do you want to funnel a question, Peter? Or do you want me to keep going?
Got it. Yeah, let's do it. So, we had a question around how you can funnel information back to a brand that may not be selected for a review. Is it normal to provide feedback to brands? What's a great way for a brand who may not be selected to approach that conversation? I think, oftentimes brands say, hear crickets, or they just get a no response, but how can brands kind of capitalize on that opportunity to continue moving forward and make it a learning opportunity?
Yeah, I would say I hear often it's that they don't get feedback, and I love to give feedback, but sometimes we get really busy as category managers. We just have a million things being thrown at us at once. So I would say, if you don't get feedback and I just say, hey, thanks, we're going to pass, but please make sure that, you submit again in the future. If you want feedback, I would ask for it. You're not always going to get it. It depends on who your category manager is and just what their personality and style is. But if somebody comes back and says, hey, would you mind just sharing what it was? Then I'll stop and I'll take a couple minutes and I'll share if I haven't already given the feedback. If it's a brand that, like I said, like I'm interested in, I think there's something there, but there's something missing, then, I initiate that conversation and say like, hey, can we talk about this? Because I want to see how willing they are to, how open they are to change and discussion in future, or saying like, hey, well, I know that you just bought like 10,000 units or 100,000 units of this current packaging. When you're getting down to the bottom and you're looking at, redoing it, could you reach out again? Because I'm definitely interested. But yeah, I would ask for it. I mean, I know that it's hard to get feedback. So there just will be a lot of crickets, I think. So when you do get feedback, I would definitely take it to heart for sure. And yeah, I would ask for the conversation, right? If that's really important to you, and see where you go from there.
Speaking from the sales side, being on the other side of the desk from Shannon, I will say you don't get a lot done if you don't ask. So definitely ask. I've gotten some great feedback, but never would have received it had I not had, the opportunity to ask for that after a decline. I'm just going to add real quick for folks that are asking questions. Shannon has provided a document that's going to kind of guide everyone through, hey, if you do want to get in touch with Metropolitan Market and Shannon specifically, here's some of the required info, expectations, the right way to go about it. Included in that is some of the answers to some of the questions we're seeing around, specific expectations on margin, trade expectations, those sort of things. So just in lieu of that kind of keeping that in mind, we're going to prioritize questions that are a little bit more holistic in nature that may not be answered by that document. And if we have time to kind of cover some of the other more specific ones later, we can certainly get into them. But just know that if I'm not answering a question or not asking a question here, keep an eye out for the email that we're going to send after the session, either this afternoon or tomorrow, that will include a link to that document that may answer some of these outstanding questions as well.
So when we set this up and we were talking, last month, and I was most curious to hear some of your insights about the best things that you've seen brands do when they're getting on the shelf and then staying on it. And then some of the no-nos, like just cringeworthy things. So I wonder if you wouldn't mind sharing a couple of both so that we can help them be better and avoid some of those pitfalls.
Yeah. I think, we covered it a little bit, but just the brands that are super engaged, they're always checking in with, can you give me, a follow-up from the promotion that we just launched with, right? How did it go? Did it meet, they're asking me to meet your expectations. Is there something better that we could do? And I think brands that pivot very quickly, that are able to be flexible with their plans, especially if things aren't going well, or if they are going well. If something worked really well beyond their expectations, well, let's keep that momentum going, right? And I think sometimes brands will say, oh, sweet, that worked, we're good, we're set, right? We don't even have to touch base for 3 months. So I think it's just the brands that are hyper vigilant, and, you know, treat every shelf they're on like it's gold, right? Because every shelf matters, and each community, right, matters, because you have a different shopper at each store, at each neighborhood, at each city. So you never want to lose that momentum that you've gained, right, traction in a certain store or retailer. Pitfalls. A big one that I see is when a brand starts making headway and they drop their broker. They think, oh, good, we got there. We got through all the hard, you know, the red tape. We got on all the shelves we wanted to be at. We don't need the reps anymore. And I'm always like, I come from that world, you know, between being a buyer and here again, I was a rep for a very long time. And it just pains me because as a category manager, the level of store support that I see that matters, it's a lot, right? Having a local brokerage that is building that relationship when you're too busy, right? You're busy talking to somebody else. You're talking to Whole Foods or Erewhon or whoever it is. So your attention is pulled elsewhere. So you need somebody with local roots who's going to be popping in. Oh, did the promo tags not go up? Well, shoot, they're going to email me and say, hey, Shannon, why aren't tags up? And I'll be like, oh, let me check with POS. So you want someone who's keeping tabs on everything. And, you know, if you are a brand founder, you're out there trying to make big leaps, right? So you're not able to micromanage at the store level and see if tags are up in every single Met Market location. You know, are you able to see, oh, this store hasn't ordered in the last 3 weeks? That's not on par with the sales I see. That's interesting. Do you guys need an order? Let me pop in. Can I write an order? Can you approve it? Is your person out with COVID? That's been happening a lot. And so the brands that have local people on the ground, they can do that and they can fill the shelf, right? And so keeping that momentum going. So I think just, yeah, making sure that there's somebody with local roots is super important. What else? I also see sometimes brands where things are a little rough. And so they say, hey, we're going to cancel our promotions. And I'm always like, ooh, that's going to make it rougher. I don't think that's going to make it easier for you. I think it's more, I would rather have the conversation of, okay, times are hard for us. We need to kind of re-strategize. What's the most bang for our buck, right? Hey, Shannon, here's what we do have. What do you think we should do? Should we consolidate? Should we pull these and do the savings book instead? Should we pull the savings book and do more TPRs? And I like having that conversation because I'm probably the best person to tell you where you're going to get the most bang for your buck at Metropolitan Market in my department. So I like to have that opportunity, and instead of just at the end, I'm like, whoa, that didn't work out. And then it's sad, right? Because then they end up getting discontinued and off shelf when there might have been a plan to get out of that. So again, I mean, I guess for me, it's a lot about communication, because it's always about planning and strategizing for both sides.
Yeah, that's what I'm always trying to tell our clients as well, that, you know, this, when you're starting to work with retailers and category buyers, like, this is a true partnership. This isn't, like you said before, a set it and forget it type of situation. You know, you are both there to please a consumer of a product and give them the best product they can get for the money. And it's important to keep those lines of communication open, which kind of leads me into this next topic, which really is about, maybe we could start out by saying, from a percentage standpoint, how much of the planning do you expect to come from the brands versus you pushing to them to say, I want this much promotion, or I want you to do a demo, versus them bringing it to you and saying, hey, Shannon, this is what we've got for you?
I think it kind of depends how new the brand is, right, to retail. If this is their first rodeo, I'm more than happy to hold their hand on the way through it. But once we've gone through the process and I've let you know the expectations and I've laid it out and I've helped you get there, then I would hope that they're on top of it themselves. You know, it can get frustrating when you have a brand that's been around for a while, and they're not responding to my emails, you know, reaching out. Like, I'll do broad emails out and say, hey guys, here's a program that I'm working on. I think this is going to be really successful for all the brands to participate. Here's the details. Here's what I'm offering. Here's what I would like you to come to the table with. here's the deadline for you guys to submit, for how you want to participate. Let's have a conversation, right? And I'll put that out to everybody on my vendor contact list. And then you have big brands that it's crickets, and it kills me because I'm like, it doesn't matter how long you've been around. There's always something new. There's always something fresh. And if you're not continuing to participate, it's not going to work out. Some of the biggest national brands that are huge with us, they participate in everything. They reply yes to all my asks. How much, which page? And I know that, some smaller brands will say, well, that's about money, but it's not always, because again, we can have that conversation. It doesn't have to always be deep pockets. I just want to see the motivation. I want to see that you guys are interested in succeeding, and how you can push the brand to the next level. Yeah.
Gotcha. There's just 10 minutes left. Do we have more questions that you want to get mixed in from the crowd, or should I just?
We do, yeah. Well, I might be stealing your thunder a little bit here, but there's a couple questions in here around, Shannon, like how you look at your category and what data you want to see from brands, whether that's survey data of their own consumers, demographic data, panel data, point of sale data. So I guess that might be stealing some of Mark's thunder here with some of the questions, but I'd love for you to chat a little bit about what's the data that you're looking at, and where are you getting that, but also what data do you want to see from brands, especially maybe first time brands that may not have a lot of time in market, they may not have a lot of point of sale data. What are you looking for from those brands as well?
So yeah, I guess it depends on where they're starting from. If they're starting from scratch and they're not even direct to consumer, they're just starting out fresh, then I just go on gut, right? I go on gut feeling. I go on past maybe similar items or flavor profiles or scent profiles or price points, and we just kind of go from there. We'll talk it through. If they have been online, then I definitely want their rankings from online sales. It doesn't always translate, but it gives me, like I said, like a good starting point to see what we're working with. If you have already been in other retail doors, I like to see national and regional data, if that's something that you guys have. Because again, I like to get a feel, because California and Washington, not always the same shopper, right? Same with Washington and Oregon, right? I like to get as hyper specific as we can. I always ask, what other retailers are you in? What's rankings there, right? Like what's the top sellers there? It's kind of just whatever you have, I want to see it, right? Whatever the data is that you can get me. So just throw it at me and say, hey, here's what we have. What would you like to see? Or I've attached it all, and then I can view it as I want. We have a data team over here. It's a newer team for us. And, we just partnered with 𝐁𝐈 to get a lot of data that we're still working on. So yeah, I mean, I'll kind of take what they can get. Just depends on what they can get their hands on, really.
Good segue to plug Nielsen, because Nielsen's also partnered with Startup CPG. And if you're a brand in the community, if you haven't already, you can log in to 𝐕𝐲𝑒r through the Startup CPG link and get a couple of free reports, which can be very useful in some of these conversations. The other thing I would point out is, buyers like Shannon are looking at Nielsen data, whether you're bringing it to them or not. And it's important for you to make sure that you're communicating with Nielsen to make sure that your products are accurately categorized, represented in the system. So whether or not you are at a point where you want to be buying that data, it's important, I think, for you to be working with Nielsen to make sure that if you're on shelf somewhere, that data is being accurately represented. Because if you're growing, you want to be discoverable by buyers in that data. You want to be kind of being surfaced in the data that they're looking at. I'll bounce off that question if it's okay to ask. What are good metrics for success that you're looking at when you're looking at pulling products off the shelf to make room for others? Is there always a bottom performer that you're eager to get rid of, or oftentimes are there a lot of mediocre performers and you're looking to add something that's more strategic based on incrementality or a new offering that might be a little bit more unique? How are you thinking about your category in that regard?
It's kind of all of the above, and it depends on the category. Sometimes I'll go to do a review and I'll be like, there's no bottom dog here. Okay, so, and then I'll be looking at what's new and exciting. Is there something more exciting than I already have? Do I have a lot of similar items, right? If I get rid of these two, but I still have these two options, is it going to be good enough for my customer? Does that make room for something new and fresh? But yeah, I mean, you know, the easy way is like, wow, these are just underperforming by leaps and bounds. I will look at those items within its own brand, as well as against the category and competing items as well. And so sometimes it's a full brand gone. Sometimes it is more just cherry picking within and saying, and this is where the partnership comes in too, is, hey, I want you to know these 3 items are really underperforming. We've given it a really good go and it's just not, it's not working. Do you have anything new coming, right? Is there anything fresh? Do we need to fix the mix? Do we have the wrong SKU assortment here? Did I choose these 4, but these other 2 suddenly bumped up because who knows what happened? So I like to give brands an opportunity instead of losing shelf space to fix the shelf space, if you will. So that's an opportunity as well. Yeah, what else? Yeah, I would just say, yeah, redundancies, underperformers, and then, yeah, just what's fresh and new, right? Like, let's just mix it up, or the whole category is underperforming. Do I need to cut the category down? You know, does another category need to grow exponentially with space? And then, yeah, it's just making those decisions from there based on space as well. So you're not always just stuck with, I've got 2 feet. Sometimes you've got more. So
absolutely. Yeah. Just as a note, we do have the time until 3 o'clock, I believe, Pacific time. Shannon, is that still good for you?
Yeah. So.
We've got plenty of time to get through some more questions. So if you have questions outstanding, feel free to throw them in. I've got one more, then I'll kick it back over to Mark. I'm sure you've got a bunch more, Mark. But you know, we see this question quite often in the Startup CPG Slack community. But what are some good ways for brands in the community to engage with category managers if they're from a new or smaller brand? We often see 𝐕𝐢𝐝𝐻 mentioned. Is that a way that you use to discover products? Do you do much product discovery, or is it more on a basis of who's coming to you actively? And what is a good way? What's the right, you know, way to reach out to buyers for the first time, assuming that information is not easily accessible on the website? Because I will say, you are going to annoy buyers if there's obvious information on the website around how to submit and it's not followed. So with that in mind, all of that in mind, what are good ways for brands to stand out and engage with category managers and buyers? Are there tools that you'd recommend? Is there a language that you'd recommend?
I mean, I've used 𝐕𝐝𝐻 here and there. I think it's a little bit less strong for my department and the quality that I'm looking for specific to metropolitan market, right, for my customer. But I know that a lot of those sites are growing, and I do go on them and I do look around. I'm always on the hunt. I do this 24/7, whether I'm at work or not. I'm always looking at product. I'm reading articles, you know, looking at trade magazines, online, you know, trade things. I'm going to other retailers. I'm on Instagram. I'm on social media. I'm asking my friends what they're using. I'm just always digging around. But yeah, I mean, you know, I always see stuff that's new to me just from people submitting. So on our website, we do have a link that says, you know, are you looking to contact or to get your product right in our store? And there's a link, it goes, it will find its way to the right category manager. Absolutely. And I would tell people there's a form to fill out. And if you actually fill it out, it gives us a lot more information to go off of. Sometimes people just put like their email address, and I'm like, I don't know what you're selling me, right? I don't have time to go digging around. So those forms just come directly to us. Please put your website if it's on there, because I'll go dig around and see what's what. I'll read reviews, right, from customers. We don't love it when samples are sent without a conversation first. We get mountains of samples that are already what we would call like approved samples. So as great as samples are, I would still say reach out, start the conversation, and make sure the category manager is interested. We don't want to waste your time, your money, your product, your shipping, if we're not ready for it, or if we're not interested, or it's just not going to be a fit for the store. So definitely make sure that there's a level of interest there for that. Sorry, was there another part to that?
I think that's great.
Okay.
Shannon, I'm curious, like along those lines about how you're identifying products, like to what extent do you or other buyers at Metropolitan use trade shows, like traditional, either walking, like in-person shows? I know COVID has been a damper on that, but then, there's also ECRM, which is partnered with 𝐕𝐲𝐻, who have an in-person version of what 𝐕𝐲𝐻 does online. To what extent do you use any of those vehicles?
I would say that as a company with category managers, we use those a lot. I don't usually attend a lot of those shows because they're not really as specific to my department. I tend to go to a bit more indie shows, like this weekend, I'll be flying out to LA to go to a clean beauty summit, right? So a little bit outside the norm there. But yeah, I would say the majority of my colleagues, they do ECRM, they do the UNFI shows, they do, we do some online shows. I'm going to tell you they're difficult. The online shows are very kind of hard to navigate, and they haven't been as successful as I think we would all hope them to be. So I'm hoping that, yes, we're getting back to in-person. Expo West and Expo East, absolutely super important. I know it costs a lot of money, so it's definitely an investment, something that you have to plan for, but I live for those shows, right? We have a lot of amazing conversations, meet a lot of amazing brands. There's even, brands are just walking around outside introducing themselves, met some awesome people that way. So yes, I would say that if you can invest in some trade shows, right, do your homework, make sure that it's really, like-minded people attending, because there's a lot of different shows. But I definitely think they're worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you are considering either the expos, anybody, you've got to plan well in advance.
Yes.
When I was attending maybe 10, 12 years ago, I remember the sidewalk might have had 1 or 2 tents on it outside. And now, it's just lined, and they're spilling it. The show spills over into the adjacent hotel ballrooms. It's like, for us, we treat it like the Super Bowl of the year, really, because there's so many decision makers there.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to shamelessly plug as well. We will have a big event at Expo East. Nielsen is going to be the proud title sponsor of that event as well. So we will be releasing more information on that in the coming weeks, but keep an eye out for that. It's going to be Thursday night of Expo. It's going to be a ton of fun and a great way to just get together as a community, but potentially, Shannon, you're invited, maybe even meet folks like Shannon. And we, Expo is a huge focus for the industry, huge focus for our community. We'll have opportunities similar to what we did at Expo West if you went to the event, to highlight some of the earlier stage brands that are really hustling, who may not have a booth. We're going to have the backpack brands exhibit at the event as well. So keep an eye out for all the information. It'll come in the next couple of weeks, but certainly an event not to miss.
Yeah, I saw that comment pop up real quick at the bottom there, and I'll just address it quickly and say that, there's, as Shannon mentioned, there's a lot of different trade show types. And so you want to make sure that you are matching up with your product, what it is, who it is, and the consumers you're going after with the type of trade show that you go to. So, Expo East and Expo West are very natural and health conscious type of shows. So that also kind of circles back to what she was saying about your packaging, to make sure that if you've got that going on, you want to highlight that. and really call it out. Because if I remember the stat right, Shannon, I think the consumer has less than 7 seconds to make a decision when they're standing there looking at your product, and you've got to help sell it. And that's what Shannon wants to see too. And a trade show is another avenue for you to do that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, and I would say those trade shows too, they're a great way to start that dialogue, right? You get a lot of eyes on and a lot of feedback right there, right at your booth as well.
Mm-hmm. And side note, I mean, having gone to it for so long, I've seen brands go to the show just in search of acquisition, to be honest with you. You know, the bigger folks are walking around looking to see who they're going to snap up because it's the latest new trend, and they're looking for that acquisition. So there's a lot of things going on there.
Yeah.
Mark, do you have any other top of mind questions? I've got a couple we can continue to run through.
No, go for it. I mean, I do want to shamelessly pitch all the free data I have available to help these emerging brands at the end. But
yeah, okay, great. Well, real quick before we get to that, let's so we didn't plan this, but Shannon, we got a question about what makes a good sell sheet, and the question included a link to a sample sell sheet. Now, this isn't one that I don't think this would be in your category because it's a snack product, but if you're open to it,
I can still give you my feedback.
It'd be fun to throw up the sample sell sheet that's here.
It's like Shark Tank with a category.
Yeah, and get your feedback on it in the moment. And things that I think would be helpful to kind of highlight would be, you know, obviously what's good, if there's anything bad about it, you know, what could be improved. And then for you, what kind of makes an ideal sell sheet, something that's a leave behind, whether it's something that's geared toward you or the store associates. What is it that you want to see in a sell sheet from a brand?
Yeah, so yeah, it looks like, so I can definitely see case packs. I will tell you that I like having a UPC for each item. I definitely, sorry, it's a little hard to see, so forgive me, but I like to see wholesale pricing on there. I want to have everything in one sheet, right? If you're selling it to me and I come from this world sell sheet, it should all be right there. I want to be able to go back like, oh yeah, I just saw those, or I'm just thinking about it, and I want it all right there. So I know that, right, this one's packed. It's got the nutrition facts, which is great. It's got the master case packs, which I like. But I want some wholesale pricing on there. Yeah, I want UPC and wholesale pricing as well. Yeah. I would say too, depending on if you're in distribution, adding in your distributor codes as well. Sometimes depending on what we're doing, I know and my colleagues too, we'll just go into like our portal and we'll look at our own pricing, right? Because we get volume pricing. So that's another way for us to just get a lot of information up front. And sometimes that leads to interest or not interest, right?
Right. Awesome.
I'll make a quick comment on this too. Also, from a characteristic standpoint, you can see that this is gluten-free, non-GMO, vegan straight away. And those are all attributes that we collect from your packaging and report back out in the information. So that's important for a bunch of reasons, but the number one way is it makes it easy for someone like Shannon to pull up our data, and she can pull something like, let's say she's looking to add a vegan product to her line. She can pull the category data and say, I just want to look at all vegan products. And then she can go evaluate their performance in a matter of minutes to see who's shining like a star. And so she could consider bringing that on into Metropolitan.
Awesome. Great segue to talk about the data that's available. Mark, I'll let you kind of take it away on that, but I will say, just as a user of Nielsen and 𝐕𝐲𝑆 data, the data that I've been able to acquire through them has been tremendously impactful for both how I manage my business with the retailers, how I think about my promo plan, how the effectiveness of that, how I think about my pitch to folks like Shannon, as well as how I think about, you know, the innovation strategy for the brand and where we need to go. So I'll plug that as a user, it's a great experience, especially the soft landing you get through some of the free reports available through Startup CPG. The Nielsen team is exceptionally helpful as well. And I'll let Mark kind of talk about what's available.
Yeah, so I think I want to start by level setting about the way that this used to be. There used to be a database, and you could pull some Excel numbers out, and then you had a bunch of numbers in front of you had to make heads or tails of. And with all the different hats that you're all wearing, it makes it difficult to carve out that time to do that, because you've got a million other things that are seemingly more important. But a year ago, we created an everyday analytics type of platform that is extremely easy to use. It is meant for someone who's never touched data before. So it's not complicated. And, I think that's what Peter was alluding to. But also, I would want to make sure that everybody understands that you're not out there to just have to go it alone either. I've got a team of 40 plus people who are all sitting here clamoring to help you, because they have that same passion that I do, right? They want to see your products get on shelf, and for you to live your dreams and expand and meet all the goals that you set forth. And so while 𝐕𝐲𝐢𝐧 is meant to be a platform that has all this information, and it answers very easy questions, like, if I wanted to gain more distribution, what would be the best store for me to go to? You can click 2 buttons, and that platform will tell you. It builds what we call stories. So while it will produce raw data for you, you can get a category review out of it. And it will cover everything from what that category looks like, where it's growing, how it's growing, who the major players are. It can focus on your brand versus competitive brands. It's 10 slides long, very easy to read. And the best thing about it is you don't have to put it together. It's already there. You choose your category, you choose your market, and click a couple buttons, and within about 2 minutes time, you'll have a full category review. So, my shameless plug here is that this is not how it used to be for those of you who have been around a while. And for those of you that might have heard how it is, I want you to know that it's all very easy to use, and it's meant to be intuitive. And there's a resource center in there. So if you have a question, you can go there. It has a chat bot that starts out as a complete fake person, but within 2 clicks, you can get to a real person that works on my team in less than 2 minutes, typically between 8 and 5. And then of course there's me, there's the phone number. We're all here to help you. And I really mean that. I want you all to know, like, the whole goal of my existence and my team's existence is to help you. And so please take that help, because we're through Startup CPG, we are offering free data. Beyond the free data, we have an opportunity to just do project-based work. So let's say that you are interested in getting into metropolitan market. For about $1,000, give or take, we can pull one report out of it that's specific to metropolitan market on your exact category that you're trying to get into. We can show you all of the competitors, all of their price points, how much they're selling it on promotion. When they sell it on promotion, what's the price point? I mean, just like a myriad of information that Shannon would love for you to have, so that you're that much more informed about the category when you show up in front of her, right? So we can do project-based work all the way up to full access. And I will leave it by saying that it's never been more affordable. We have completely changed the pricing structure. And the best example that I can put across is when I was working with that brand 18 years ago, she wanted to see what the total United States looked like for granola, every single store we tracked, to get a sense of, if I gained 1% market share, how many millions of dollars would I make, right? Well, 18 years ago, that report cost $4,000 for just one Excel spreadsheet that she had to analyze and make heads or tails of, right? Well, now with 𝐕𝐲𝐢𝐧 and the tiered pricing that we have, if you are just getting into the market and you're in a tier 1, you can get everything you could possibly need, ongoing access to all retailers, not just Metropolitan, like we're sitting here with Shannon, for as little as maybe $800 a month. So when you get to the point where you're starting to gain traction in the marketplace, you're going to find that you need to have this information in order to help you. And I want you to know that what I'm doing is not selling $100,000 packages. The whole goal of us changing the strategy is to try and help you. And we want to grow with you. And I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. So reach on out to us. We really do want to help.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. And thanks, Shannon, again for the time today. If you are registered, which you had to be in order to attend, you're going to get an email tomorrow, probably tomorrow morning, with just kind of a recap of what we talked about today, but also links to everything that we're talking about here. I'm going to drop the link to 𝐕𝐲𝐢𝐧 one more time in the chat to everyone, as well as Mark's contact information. Mark, hopefully that's okay. of course. And please don't hesitate to reach out to them. I will say I've definitely taken Mark at his word that it's they're there to help, and I've certainly maybe stressed that a little too much sometimes, but their entire team is super helpful and very, very eager to help any of the brands that are in Startup CPG. So you'll get an email with more information on that. You'll get an email. That email will also include some of the information that Shannon has shared around best practices and how to engage with her team specifically. And if you have more questions, jump into the Slack, throw your questions in the sales channel or any of the other relevant channels, and we'll do our best to make sure that they get answered. Thank you guys so much for the time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for giving us the platform. Thanks, Shannon.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.